You may have heard the old adage that blood is thicker than water, and understandably assumed it meant that the blood of family is more important than anything else in the world. And while that is the modern take on the phrase, the famous saying was shortened from its original form, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning that the connection born of shedding blood together is stronger than the family you're born into. That idea that the family you treasure most isn't bound to those you're related to is a concept that has always fascinated me, and one that I believe Kobayashi-san Chino and Maid Dragon proves constantly throughout the series. To begin, the core character of the show is a human whose biggest problem is that she's lonely. Though blessed with a caring family and a friendly coworker, she isn't really as close to anyone as she would like. To fix this, she does what humans have been doing for centuries to solve their issues, and gets absolutely hammered. Kobayashi-san, a mid-20s coder for a company in Japan, wakes up after a night of intense drinking to answer the door to her apartment. Outside is the gigantic snout of a dragon, and after a moment of paralytic fright as Kobayashi-san's mind struggles to debug what in her reality is causing her to see such an impossible sight, the dragon turns into a maid, as they do. So begins the new, more fun life Kobayashi-san shares with Toru the Maid Dragon. Now, while the anime as a whole is tuned toward a fish-out-of-water story as Toru and the other dragons try to live as humans, the show's major focus is on what family is and how each character defines what that term means. The interactions between the main cast reflect facets of the various family situations that exist in reality, and there's a surprising lack of bias toward the idea of what a traditional family is, which makes each situation all the more touching. The family that Kobayashi-san eventually gathers around herself is completely different from the lonely life she led previously, and it's all thanks to drunkenly stumbling across a similarly lonely dragon in the mountains. To Toru, the sense of belonging she feels with Kobayashi-san is a new concept, because throughout her long life she was never part of any close-knit group. Even her parents left her to her own devices in their crusade against the gods, as seems to be the culture of the Chaos Dragon faction that Toru and her relatives are a part of. So to understand why Toru is so keen on becoming Kobayashi-san's lover, or at the very least her maid, we can take a look at what being with this human gives her as part of the concept of family that she didn't have in her life previously. A meaningful connection with someone who shares her sorrows. Being without people to care for you, as a family normally would, is a completely understandable reason for being caught off guard by someone offering a place for you in their life, even if that person is someone you have a bias against. Despite Toru's issues with humanity, she still takes the time to talk to Kobayashi-san, and manages to find a strange kinship with a drunken woman that she wouldn't have found otherwise. People are shaped by their experiences, and this goes just as much for dragons as it does humans. Toru accepts Kobayashi-san's offer to live together because of the connection she feels they share, aimless loneliness. That sense of acceptance Toru hasn't found elsewhere is the defining reason she even considers living with a human. That Toru's attitude toward humanity cools throughout the series is a testament to how much she learns with her experiences in Japan, as the people in the markets, her neighbors, and even humans outside of her initial circle become just as much her family as the person she cherishes above all else. To Toru, family is a choice to feel connected to someone else, and that isn't something you can find just in the people that birthed you, as we see both in her case as well as the next dragon to appear in the series, Kana. Though young by dragon standards, Kana Kamui is a surprisingly wise soul that at first is suspicious and threatening towards Kobayashi-san. However, Kana quickly finds herself connecting with Kobayashi-san in ways that even Toru couldn't, as that inexperience with life and want for attention takes center stage. While Toru and Kana's circumstances of being alone are somewhat similar, the cause is a little bit different, which directly correlates to the different connections they share with Kobayashi-san. After being exiled from her family thanks to a series of pranks to gain attention, Kana follows Toru to the human world in order to cling to someone she knows. Abandoned by her family and stranded in a new and unfamiliar place without any sympathy, the fact that Kobayashi-san eventually offers her exactly what she's wanted her entire life is enough to overcome her. Kana immediately warms up to Kobayashi-san, since no one else, not even her birth parents, had ever given her the home and attention she yearned for. Now, a special connection to a person and the attention from someone special may sound like the same idea on the surface, but there is still a difference in what they mean to each character. The belonging Toru feels in this case is a strong connection to someone else that Toru never realized she needed until she came upon it. In Kana's case as a younger dragon, all she wanted was the attention and care that her birth mother never provided. She acted out to gain attention, so Kana's problem was more the concept of not having a place where she could be welcomed and warmed as she lived her life. Otherwise, she might have eventually ended up like Fafnir. Long having given up any hope of a meaningful relationship with humanity, Fafnir instead stayed in his cave, wrapped around his treasures, content with the objects and possessions he surrounded himself with. But once he's invited to the human world by Toru, he finds himself intrigued with an aspect of human culture that speaks to needs long since atrophied, a shared interest in the objects he so dearly holds on to. Without another to speak to or admire the collection, and without the intent to steal or hoard the collection themselves, Fafnir was simply a shell of a person. Once he's given the chance to have that shared interest with someone he initially believes beneath him, he gains a small amount of happiness and contentment as his attitude towards humanity starts to shift. Throughout the series, Fafnir is the one that often questions why Toru and the other dragons seem so connected to the fleeting lives of their humans. To him, nearly all of humanity is simply a challenge to his sense of ownership, a threat or an irrelevance, in his words, a miss. But through living with Takia, who shares his interest and generally seems happy to speak with Fafnir about those interests, the Dark Dragon realizes that not every human is the same. Rarely, he realizes, you can find a hit, even if it's just one other person in this otherwise dreary world. There's always someone out there that could make you feel happy and fulfilled, even if you don't believe you need it. All you need to do is look. To Fafnir, family is a bonding over a shared interest, though interest doesn't necessarily have to be shared to give a sense of family, as Quetzalcoatl proves. To those already with a family that one cares for, the idea that one would need more than that may feel unnecessary at first. But with Quetzalcoatl, or Lucoa as she calls herself, there's a sense of belonging that comes with watching over the people you choose to make part of your life, just as much as the people with whom you're related to by blood. Though often the butt of many boob jokes and fan service sequences in the series, Lucoa actually displays the most subtle version of family among the dragons. While possibly intentional both on Lucoa's part and the part of the creators, her overt displays of fan service may distract the viewer from her matriarchal subtleties she displays in the quieter scenes. Lucoa cares deeply for every member of the cast, and that may be because she's had a family to love and enjoy prior, though maybe a bit too much if you know the story she keeps interrupting regarding her aversion to alcohol. Digression aside, the other dragons, and even Kobayashi-san, never really had the same sort of relationship that Lucoa implies she's had. She smothers Shoda in a comical fashion throughout the series, but the original intention behind her becoming his familiar in the first place was to keep him from coming into contact with an actual demon. Talking with Kobayashi-san, you can sense that Lucoa watches over Toru in a similar fashion, to make sure Toru is being treated well by the people in her life. Lucoa also seems to easily understand why Toru and Kobayashi-san get into a competitive fight later in the series. They've become comfortable enough with one another to do so. There's a wisdom about her character that shows itself as the foster family Lucoa feels, watching over the people you choose to bring into your life to keep them safe and happy. And then we come to Elma, the odd one out of the whole cast, at least on the surface. But the truth is, Elma isn't that different from how the other dragons are now that they exist on Earth with their self-chosen families. The only difference, I theorize, is that Elma already has a family, so she doesn't need one here on Earth. She's the most independent of the cast, despite her clumsy and dumb nature, because she probably has had a loving family as a member of the Order faction of dragons. In turn, she lives in balance to the others, both in philosophy and canon, as well as on the whole the cast's attitude toward the family they choose. And that's just fine, because the family you choose can be the family you're born into, as long as you're satisfied and happy with your decision. What ultimately matters is what you decide, and just as Toru and the others chose to surround themselves in a family they never felt they had, Elma does the opposite, and only stops in as a friend because she's satisfied with what she has already. Even though I value the idea that you can create a family out of the people around you, family itself is so much more than one specific idea. There are countless facets to the word, and the definition can change from person to person. There's people who call their blood the most important aspect of their lives, and there's also those who determine that the people who they choose to be with are the family regardless of blood. There's everything in between and all around. Adoption, true birth, whatever you decide is important to you is what family is. Live life confident in your choice, but always remember not everyone will agree with you on your definition. Understanding is a huge part of being a family, which is why I think the internet is such a powerful tool in the world. You can surround yourself virtually or physically with anyone from around the entire planet. Different cultures, races, creeds, choices. Understanding and compassion for people will hopefully one day realize the dream I have of a united Earth. And though it's just as likely we'll nuke ourselves into a firestorm of blood and ash like Toru often wishes, I choose to believe that one day humanity will be the concept I see family as. Even if my dream never occurs, at least I'll have my hits, as Fafnir would say. And I hope you do too. In Kobayashi-san, Maid Dragon, Toru and the other dragons we follow come to Earth and learn just what family means to them, after lifetimes of different experiences with the people they've come to know. Only experience can prove the worth of your self-proclaimed family. So go out there and find your hits, wherever and whatever they may be, even if they were right next to you all along. And remember, enjoy the way you watch anime, because as long as you're having fun, that's all that really matters. See you next time.